Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Pursuit Zone Adventure Travel Podcast. This is episode 165 with Hollie Woodhouse. Hollie's been on the show before. She was in episode 124 where she talked about the Jungle Ultra Race. You can find that episode at thepursuitzone.com/TPZ124. In this episode, she talks about 29 days she spent skiing across Greenland. If you want to get in touch, you can send me an email at paul@thepursuitzone.com or leave me a voice message at speakpipe.com/thepursuitzone. And now, let me introduce my guest. Out of almost 200 applicants, Hollie Woodhouse, along with 3 other young explorers, were selected to take on the 2018 Antarctic Heritage Trust Inspiring Explorers Expedition, a 560-kilometer crossing of the Greenland ice cap on skis, in tribute to Fridtjof Nansen, the renowned polar explorer and humanitarian who completed the first crossing of Greenland 130 years prior. Their team battled hurricane conditions, heavy snowfalls, and illness, but after starting on the west coast on May 4th, they arrived in the east coast village of Tasiilaq on June 1st. Hollie is also the creator of Say Yes to Adventure magazine, which is filled with inspiring adventure stories and photos. You can learn more about Hollie and her adventures at holliewoodhouse.com. Hollie Woodhouse, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me back on.
What got you interested in wanting to do this polar expedition?
Well, it's funny, really. A polar environment has never been on my sort of radar or to-do list, really. But I was listening to the radio one morning while I was getting ready for work, and an interview came on with Nigel from the Antarctic Heritage Trust, and he was talking about this expedition that they had. And as the day went on and I thought about it more, I thought this is really an opportunity of a lifetime and something that I had to apply for. So it's something that wasn't on my radar, but just one of those things you say yes and find yourself outside your comfort zone.
Well, who are they, or what are they, or what is the Antarctic Heritage Trust?
The Antarctic Heritage Trust is a New Zealand-based charity with a vision of inspiring explorers. Their mission is to conserve, share, and encourage the spirit of exploration. The Trust cares for the Antarctic explorers, including Robert Falcon Scott, Shackleton, and Hillary, and it shares the legacy of exploration through programs like the Inspiring Explorers, one that I was involved with.
So what was the application process like?
It was quite long. I applied mid-September or end of September, and I found out that I'd made an interview stage early December, and then the end of January, I, along with six of us, spent a weekend in Christchurch in the South Island of New Zealand. It was called a shakedown trip, where we really got into the nitty-gritty of what the expedition would involve. Our guide, Bent, flew out from Norway and was part of that weekend as well. And then I was fortunate to get a phone call the week later to say that I had made the team.
Cool. So the interview process, was that like phone interviews, like Skype interviews?
At the beginning, I was lucky. I'm based in Christchurch, where the Antarctic Heritage Trust is based also. So I was able to go in and have a face-to-face interview. There was then a Skype interview with the guiding company, with the Norwegian guiding company, and then obviously based in Christchurch from then as well. So I was fortunate, but for most others it was, Skype interviews.
So what kind of questions are they asking you?
Well, they're just really trying to figure out what your character's like, actually, if this is something that you really want to do, whether you're going to fit to be part of a team, what your background is, a big part of this was our outreach program, like how we were then going to share our experience and of the expedition with other people to then pass on the experience that we had to then inspire another generation of people to then, it's just trying to get people to step outside of the normal day-to-day and do something that challenges them while also doing something that's obviously based around the Heritage Trust and that spirit of exploration and those first-time explorers.
So after you were selected, how long did you have to prepare?
We hit 3 months, which it's not really long at all. But it probably was. It was fine. I just had an intense 3 months of training, getting all our gear, and then went so fast, and all of a sudden we were on a plane heading to Greenland.
What does the trust provide? Do they provide gear and travel costs, or how much of the expense falls onto you?
We had to fund a small portion of it, but it is primarily funded by the Antarctic Heritage Trust. Most of our gear was supplied through the company that we guided with. We had to supply our clothing, but we were actually lucky that Kathmandu, an outdoor clothing company, provided a lot of our clothing, so Gore-Tex layers, which was absolutely fantastic out on the ice. They just released a range called the XT series, designed for adventuring in extreme environments, exactly what we were doing in Greenland. So we took that along, and I could not fault their gear. It was absolutely fantastic.
Kathmandu is a brand that I just learned about. We don't have it here, but yeah, it seems like a pretty cool brand. What's your thoughts about it?
Kathmandu is a fantastic brand. I'm lucky. I have been an ambassador for them in the past, and while they are naming sponsors for quite a very iconic race in New Zealand called the Kathmandu Coast to Coast, a multi-sport race. So they aim to sort of cover all the everyday adventuring, so sort of heading into the hills and in a whole sort of different realm. So they're a really great brand, and even better that they're actually based from here in Christchurch, so my hometown, which is another great part of them.
Tell me about the other team members that were part of this.
So 4 of us ended up being selected. As it worked out, there was 2 Kiwis and 2 Australians. You had to have a New Zealand or Australian passport or permanent resident to apply to go on this expedition. So they ended up selecting myself and Brando Yelovich, who was another Kiwi, and then from Australia, Bridget and Keith also came with us. And you had to be between 18 and 35. So Brando was the youngest at 24, and then Keith, Bridget, and then I was the oldest on the trip. But, from going to complete strangers, we met obviously at that shakedown trip, but not very long. It was kind of weird because you're almost competing against each other. And then to go on the ice in a very challenging environment and spend what turned out to be almost a month together, it was a really great, awesome group of people to do the expedition with.
Did you have to purchase any type of special insurance for this?
Yes, we did. We just had to make sure our insurance had evacuation off the ice, which, I've done a race in the Sahara and the jungle as well, and that's sort of the going, sort of the usual insurance that comes with doing races like that. So nothing totally new, but you just had to make sure that if something did go wrong, a helicopter could come and get you off the ice. So that was sort of the difference from a normal adventure insurance.
So did you fly out of Christchurch?
Yes, flew out of Christchurch, and then so Nigel from the Antarctic Heritage Trust, he came with us as well. So Nigel and I flew out of Christchurch, and we met Keith and Brando in Singapore, and then we flew to Copenhagen, and then flew to Greenland, and we met Bridget and Bent, our guide, in Greenland.
And then when you get there, what do you do? Are there briefings? Are there like final preparations that you have to do? What happens?
We all arrived. Bridget and Bent had already spent a few days there before we got there, sorting out most of the gear. And so we flew in mid-afternoon and spent that afternoon, evening checking off gear, sorting out all our food. We carried all our food for the entire trip. So we sort of sorted that out into meals and days and made sure we had enough of that. And went through our gear and just generally sort of that sort of excited, terrified feeling before you start an expedition into the unknown.
So what was it that you were kind of most, worried about or anxious about?
I was most anxious about my size and physically being able to pull the polka. And that probably, as it turned out, was my biggest mental and physical challenge for sure. I was lighter than my polka, so the sleds were about 60 kgs and I started off 54.5 kgs. And so just trying to keep up and not let the team down was what I found extremely challenging.
On the sleds that you're hauling, mostly is that food?
Yeah, so in our sleds, we had all our food, entire food we took 27 days worth of food. And then so there were 6 of us on the trip, and between the 6 of us, we had 2 people to a tent. So we then split sort of all the tent equipment and the cooking and the fuel between us, and then our own personal items, clothing, everything. And Bent obviously had a wee bit more than us. He had quite a few backup supplies for when something would potentially go wrong, just in case.
Did you guys have were there any resupply points set up, or it's basically, hey, we got to start with everything we need to get to the end?
Yeah, no resupply points. It was what we took with us on that first day. Unless we ate it, we took it out with us at the very end.
Once you arrived in Greenland, how many days went by before you got started?
One evening, so one night. We flew in the afternoon and we started walking that next day. So coming from 35-hour or so flight from New Zealand, and then to touchdown, get sorted. There's a lot of adrenaline pumping through the veins and sort of keeping us going. And yeah, so we had that one day and straight into it.
Did you have bad jet lag?
No, it was actually pretty good. Unfortunately, though, I did catch a cold on the flight, which made, for me, that first week probably even harder than it should have been. And then, like any good cold, when you're living in an environment on top of each other, it then got passed around the group. So we sort of had that to deal with as well as learning to Nordic ski and get ourselves across the ice cap.
Was this your first time skiing?
Not skiing. I've grown up skiing up local mountains, but definitely Nordic skiing. And I probably naively thought I would pick it up a lot quicker than what I did. And it took me a while to actually find my rhythm and figure out how to do it and not step, but actually ski, especially with pulling something behind you, getting onto the ice cap. In the first 4 to 5 days, I fell over a lot, and I found it very hard to pull my polka because it wasn't flat. There was a lot of rolling sort of ice mounds. So trying to get it up and over that was at times extremely frustrating.
What about the other members of the team? Were they in the similar situation?
The boys, not so much. Bridget and I probably the most, but probably just due to probably our size and strength, we probably found it the hardest. But it was by far the biggest challenge of that trip for me was that first week and trying to get onto the ice cap and not let the team down by going too slowly was just that part of that teamwork was something that was really challenging.
What was because you must have had a daily quota for kilometers to travel. What was it? Or, I mean, was that kind of the case? And how many kilometers were you supposed to do per day?
Yes and no. At the start, the aim was to cover less kilometres, just as our body got used to it, and we sort of got more into the routine, with the idea that on that back end, on those sort of last week or so, we would up the kilometres. We were sort of heading down as well, and it would have been flatter, but unfortunately we hit a couple of storms in the later part of our trip, which reduced our kilometres quite a lot, and so we were pushing out our days quite a lot to try and cover as many kilometres as we could. So, I mean, in hindsight, you could have easily said we should have done more kilometres at the start, but I mean, my body, I'm glad we didn't, because as it turned out, it was great. But it's just one of those balancing acts about how hard do you go at the start when you know that this expedition is going to, potentially take up to a month.
All right, let's talk about Fridtjof. Let me say that again. Let's talk about Fridtjof Nansen, for who this expedition was in honor of. What can you tell us about this guy?
To be honest, he's a pretty damn legendary human. So he was a Norwegian explorer, and obviously the reason for our expedition was he was the first person to cross Greenland 130 years ago in 1888. But he's also known for his relief work after World War I. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1922. So he's also a scientist, oceanographer, diplomat, humanitarian. So he's a bit of a legend, and then very well known for his exploring as well. He went down to Antarctica as well as up in the north as well. So pretty crazy, and it was not lost on us as we were walking, and we had communication with the outside world. We had all the best food. We knew exactly where we were going. And these guys set off, 6 of them, led by Fridtjof Nansen, with sort of an end point with no idea what they were going to come across. So they are pretty, Fridtjof as well as his crew. Full respect to them, incredible explorers.
How were you navigating out there?
Navigation was actually quite a cool part of it that I didn't actually expect to learn, but we would have turns. The day was we'd sort of walk for an hour to an hour and a half and then stop for a 10-minute break. And every time we would start walking again, there would be a new person on the front that would be the guide. And we had, if the weather was clear, we would guide by the sun. We would start off with a compass and check where we were going. Obviously, we had waypoints. But we'd use the compass, check where we were going, and then from then on try and use the sun and the wind as much as we possibly could for direction. And then obviously when we were blizzard, we would use the compass. And for total backup event, our guide did have waypoints on a sat phone just to double check we were heading in the right direction.
You just said walking. Did you mean skiing, or were there sometimes...
Yeah, no. I do mean skiing. We skied the entire time we were on skis with skins underneath us so skins sort of act like a shark skin, really, where you can slide forward and then it sort of grabs the ice to reduce the slip back, if that makes sense.
What kind of temperatures were you experiencing out there?
It's all relative, really, and we'd sort of check the temperature most mornings. It was anywhere between 10 and 20 negative 10 and 20 degrees on most days, but a couple of those storms were pretty cold. One morning we were trying to cover more kilometres, so we got up early and it was in a bit of a blizzard. The wind it was super freezing, and Nigel recorded negative 39.5 with including wind chill, and that was the coldest. To me, that was the coldest part of the trip, and it was absolutely freezing. There was no way you'd take your gloves off at all if possible, but took them off for too long, more than 10 seconds and your hands were instantly frozen.
Yeah, that's pretty cold. Are you, do you have any special type of clothing that you're wearing, or just your typical layering system?
Typical layering system. I wore only merino, so merino wool for everything, socks, underwear, and then I would have 2 layers of that, and then we had the Kathmandu clothing, which was outer Gore-Tex layers, as well as some down, so like puffer layers, and good hat, good gloves, good goggles. Face was pretty much fully covered. Wore a buff or like a merino balaclava and a buff pretty much at all times as well. So it was cold, but if you were smart about it and you had the right gear, then there's no reason for the weather to be a problem.
What's a typical day like? Or what time in the morning do you get up, and how long does it take to do breakfast and get everything packed up and get going?
Yeah, it's funny because you sort of think, in your normal life, you just get up and everything's so easy, but we'd wake up and we'd boil water. It would take us about 2 hours from when we woke up to having breakfast, boiling water, getting your tent, packing down all your gear in your tent, packing it all into your polka, your sled, before you'd even sort of started what would you think was the day. I mean, in the first part of the trip, we were doing between 8 and 10 hours of walking, and then it would take another 2 hours to sort of set up your tent, get it all sorted, boil more water. We seem to boil a lot of water, and eat dinner and go to bed. Towards the end of the trip, when we knew we had more kilometres we had to cover, so we were adding sort of another hour, 2 hours, 3 hours onto our day of walking to try and cover more kilometres. So I would walk in and between an hour and a half, and then we'd stop, have a 10-minute break, and we'd do that, sort of 8 to, at the end I think we were doing 10, but we would stop at lunchtime, so middle of the day, and have an hour. We would put up a tent and get inside and just have a bit more time to eat some more food, eat some decent food and have a chat and have hot soup or hot noodles. At the start, it was sort of, trying to figure out how to get into a routine. But by the end of it, it sort of just became second nature and almost kind of meditation-like, as you just knew sort of exactly how the day was going to unfold.
That midday break where you set up a tent and have a hot lunch, was that a motivating factor, or was it like, oh man, we have to stop and set up the tent again, or it's like, I can't wait to have a hot meal for lunch?
It was probably a bit of both. I really enjoyed those lunchtime breaks because we were walking in a line. There wasn't a huge opportunity to chat with each other and sort of interact. So that lunchtime became a great way to interact, to get to know each other a bit better, and some really great conversations we had in that lunchtime tent. And on the days when I was finding it tough, that hour long, just that extra break on your body and to refuel was very much needed, especially towards the end when we were doing the longer days, for sure.
How many 0 days did you guys end up with?
We did a couple of half days. We had definitely 3 full days of not moving, some couple of half days, and probably some days when we should have stayed in our tent, but kilometres and time were not on our side, so we did keep walking.
What types of things are you eating?
Just general food. So breakfast was porridge with a lot of sugar in it, which was quite a mission. I was actually given some great sachets nutrient rescue, which I added into my porridge, which was a really great way of getting some. They were just berry flavored, and a nice way to get some kind of nutrient hit. During the day, we had just general snacking food. We had 27 blocks of chocolate, full-size blocks of chocolate, one for each day. We had chips, we had sort of nuts, and I took muesli bars from New Zealand. We had 2-minute noodles for lunch, soups. Actually, on the morning that we left, Bent was worried that we didn't have enough food, so we went to the supermarket, and I remember just thinking, we have got so much food, there is no way I'm going to be eating all this. And he told us to buy some blocks of butter, and I just thought, and that is direct comparison to weight. If you ask me, like, you can actually just pick it up and be like, I'm just putting more weight into my polka. But as it turned out, I probably should have bought more blocks of butter, and we were sort of almost eating it straight. And then for dinner, we had these Norwegian dehydrated meals called real turmac, and they were delicious. They were so great. I've actually tried to buy them since coming back to New Zealand, but I can't find anywhere that ships from New Zealand, so we'll have to work away around that one.
These Norwegian meals, they're like freeze-dried things, and they come in different flavors,
Yeah, I mean, just your typical freeze-dried meal, but I don't know whether it was because I was in Greenland and food became such an obvious part of your day, or if they were great. But I recommended them to a friend who's just done a race in an ultra race in Kenya, and he took them, and he said that they were the best he's ever had as well. So I highly recommend them.
Hey, I was looking through some of the photographs that you guys took, and I saw it looks like you guys came across this abandoned polar station. What was that like?
That was like from outer space. It was so crazy. It was called Die 2, so it was a distance early warning sort of chain. There were 60 of them stretching almost 6,000 kilometers. From Alaska to Canada via Greenland. And the reason for them was they were established to warn of any Soviet air attacks against the USA during the Cold War. So it was built in when were they built? Late 60s, and then abandoned sort of late 1988 actually. And we went in there, and it was just so crazy. I mean, they just got up and left. Everything was exactly as it was, apart from where there was quite a lot of snow that had come in. But the beer was still in the fridge, and the roast was still on the table. But it was just this just crazy building in the middle of Greenland. Yeah, very odd.
Yeah, those are cool pictures. I just have a thing for abandoned buildings, I guess. I love seeing. There's like a website you can go to where people take photographs of like abandoned shopping malls and things like that. And I find it interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been into anything like that. And it was actually quite good. We reached that building late in the afternoon, so we had plenty of time to go and explore this building. And we spent, we probably spent almost 2 hours in there just looking around and exploring, and it was like a maze, and you'd come across another room that was, it was insane. It was really insane. Yeah.
Did you bring your own camera or anything, or have an opportunity to take pictures as you went along?
Yes, so Keith actually, he has filmed the entire trip, as well as taking incredible photos along the way. So that's been turned into a documentary, which will be a great way to capture the expedition. I actually just took my iPhone and had Goal Zero polar solar panels that spread out over the back of my polka as I cruised along, and so I took a lot of photos just on my iPhone, probably knowing that Keith was getting incredible footage as well. So that's why I think we've got some amazing photos that he's taken and the documentary that will come out of it.
Do you know when that's going to be, when that's going to come out?
We're just actually doing the final sort of wrap-up filming this week. So hopefully that will come out in the next couple of months. But yeah, I'm sure I will be posting it. We're not sure how. Like, hopefully it'll get in some mountain film festival or sort of that type of thing. But it will be available. Yeah, is hopefully in the next couple of months or so.
What's that involved? The wrap-up filming, is that like just interviews with the team members?
Yes, exactly. So Keith and Bridget are actually coming over from Australia. So it'll be awesome to catch up with them again. And yeah, just sort of going over your final thoughts now that, you know, we're a couple of months home and put all our weight back on probably, and so remembering it all as a way to finish off the film.
So you started at, I think you said 54 kilograms, and when you were done nearly a month later, what was your weight?
54 and a half, and I was 47.00 when I hopped on the scales. I didn't take a mirror or anything, but I could feel my clothes getting looser. But I actually, when I got back to land and I looked in the mirror at my body, I actually almost burst into tears. The realization of actually what I had just done in that month before and what I put my body through was pretty sobering and extreme. So I lost the most amount of weight for everyone, and I looked extremely gaunt. Yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, I think it was because I was lighter to start off with, and the amount of energy that I had to use to pull the sled, plus getting sick as well, wasn't the best. But not to worry, I've put it all back on, probably plus some, unfortunately. But anyway.
Well, you can work it off in your next expedition.
Yeah, exactly. So
let's talk about this 22-hour nonstop, like, final day. Why 22 hours nonstop, and what were the conditions like that you were going through? What made this such a challenge?
That last day was just so bittersweet. I say it was the best part of the trip, and it definitely was for obvious reasons. We were normally at the end. I mean, we'd been up against it. A couple of 3 or 4 days earlier, we didn't actually know if we were going to make the end. The spring storms had put us miles behind, and we were slow going. And on that final day, we woke up and we started walking at 10 a.m. and there was a helicopter that we'd had to book. Because the boat that we originally were supposed to leave on had already gone. we were too late for that one. So that helicopter was picking us up no matter where we were. And so we just started walking at 10 a.m. with the end as the end. So, but in saying that, it was absolutely beautiful. We had the most beautiful day. It was warm. We were down to a sort of one layer of merino on our tops, and the ice that we were skiing over was hard and flat, and our polkas just pulled along, and it was such a great way to end what was quite a challenging 29 days out on the ice. And we started walking at 10 a.m. and just after lunchtime, these incredible mountains popped up over the horizon, after seeing absolutely nothing but a horizon line 360 degrees. It was nice to see something other than that, and these mountains popped up, and it was absolutely incredible. We took a dinner break about midnight, 12 a.m., and had our final meal that we had left pretty much. We were completely out of food. And made the decision. There'd been sea fog that had covered the coasts the 3 days prior, and we had the decision to make whether we stayed put where we were we knew the helicopter would be able to pick us up, or if we just made a go for it and sort of crossed our fingers and hoped that the fog would lift and the helicopter would be able to pick us up at the end. So we decided to go for it. We didn't actually finish exactly where we had intended, where we could have touched the sea, but we were up just a little bit higher with the sea sort of right behind us, and we did walk onto land without snow. So the relief of getting to the end was huge, really. Just the sense of achievement that we'd made it, and possibly because of the unknown, like even right up to, sort of 5 hours before, we didn't know if we were going to get to the end, but it was pretty awesome feeling and experience, and with a great group of people that, spent just the last 29 days with. So it was a really, really great way to finish a pretty epic expedition.
Hey, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Looking back on it, what do you think was the biggest challenge for you?
For me, definitely it was physically pulling that polka and trying to keep up. I mean, we were told we weren't allowed to sweat, obviously, because your body regulating, you start to cool down and then you get too cold. But for me to go any slower, I just had to. I was pretty much sweated, and that's probably why I lost so much weight as well. I mean, I was borderline between aerobic and anaerobic the entire time, and it was just trying to manage that so that I could keep going. That was definitely the biggest challenge, without slowing the team down and feeling like I was holding the team up. Yeah, so it was mental, and I know that's probably most mental, and it definitely was, but it's how do you cope with that and keep going day in, day out, when you're only at day 14 and you're only halfway there. But yeah, so no, we got there.
What would you say is your favorite part of the expedition?
The obvious favorite part was getting up that morning before we started that final day. We knew the end was in sight, and the weather was beautiful, and we were warm, and it was sort of the relief that you knew it was almost over. But as time's gone on and I've had a chance to reflect on it, it's probably just spending 29 days with almost strangers and doing something so far out of my comfort zone and being pushed. Now, I've never been pushed to my limit like that. I reached my limit out in Greenland, and it's just the fact that you can, if you put your mind to it, and these challenges. I mean, we do these type of expeditions to challenge ourselves, and that definitely was that. And to come out of it and to have finished the expedition and made friends with people you never would have otherwise known for me, in an environment I never thought I would have experienced, is probably, the part that you'll take away from it and look back on as being the special part of the expedition.
What about it are you most proud of?
Actually getting to the finish line as a team. We had the weather, we had managing our day, we were complete strangers, and how we worked as a team and got to the end in pretty trying conditions, I think, is something that all of us can be extremely proud of. And, to actually finish for the Antarctic Heritage Trust, to have the guts to get a group of strangers together and send them to the other side of the world and do an expedition like this is something that they can be extremely proud of as well.
So part of this was you are supposed to kind of spread the message of this expedition. How's that been going? Have you been doing any speaking engagements or anything like that?
Yes, I have. I've been quite busy actually, but I really enjoy it. People were so interested in Greenland and what the expedition was like. And a lot of them follow me on social media channels on Facebook and Instagram. And then to come back and share the story, you know, the ups and the downs and the good and the bad with these people. So, I mean, I've had speaking gigs here in Christchurch. I actually did one on Friday night in my hometown of Ashburton, and I've got some coming up as well. So it's really good. And I mean, I'd love to get more into schools and try and inspire that younger generation as well. That's something that I would love to do. But it's just a lot of people, you know, even if it's as simple as just replying to someone's message on Facebook and, you know, trying to help them sort of take that step into adventure. That's what I love, and that's what I am trying to share with everyone about Greenland and all my adventures, really.
Say Yes to Adventure magazine. How are things going with that?
Say Yes to Adventure has been, and it's probably my biggest adventure by far, but unfortunately I've just decided to put that on hold at the moment. Print is an interesting beast, and digital, without a doubt, needs to be a component of that if the print is to stay alive. And at the moment I've decided that time is not on my side to put enough energy into it, that what it needs. So at the moment, the magazine is on hold, and I'm just figuring out the best way to go forward with it.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah, it's a tough gig, print. And I love magazines, but it's an interesting way, especially with the way advertising's going, and a lot of companies, which I totally agree, you know, content is king and is a really great way, sort of that branded advertising to get it out there now. So, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities that have come from this. We'll just see where that goes.
Hollie, what's next for you?
Aside from a couple of red wines in front of the fire, no. I'm doing the Coast to Coast 2-day with a great friend, Anna McNuff from the UK. So that is the next big goal for me. So that'll be great. Just training, doing something in New Zealand, back on my doorstep. And obviously I love the Coast to Coast. It's a multi-sport race here in New Zealand. So looking forward to exploring my back doorstep again with some great friends.
Yeah, I've talked to Anna before. She's been a guest on this podcast a couple of times. How did you meet Anna?
She is a fantastic human. Anna, I actually met Anna when I was living in London, and she was just about to come to New Zealand to do the Te Aroa Trail. And so we caught up for a drink and dinner, and she asked me questions about New Zealand, and then we've just kept in touch, really. And I caught up with her when she was in New Zealand doing her run, and I've convinced her to come out and do the Coast to Coast. Cool.
Yeah, it's funny how small the adventure space is, really, when you...
Oh, yeah. And she's such a great character, so I'm very much... It'll be an awesome teammate to do Coast with.
Hollie, how can people contact you if they want to learn more?
You can head on to my website, holliewoodhouse.com, HOLLIE, or I'm on Instagram, Hollie Woodhouse, or on Facebook, The Adventurous Kiwi. So they're the best places to go, or jump online and flick me an email as well. Any questions? I'd love to help out.
Hollie Woodhouse, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing the story of your Greenland expedition. And good luck to you on the Coast to Coast race.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me back again. And thank you. I will, look forward to sharing my training as I lead up to that race.
Thank you for listening. If you want to support the show, here are a few simple ways. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you listen to the podcast. You can like the show on Facebook or follow along on Twitter @The Pursuit Zone. You can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or Spotify. This episode was recorded on September 9th, 2018. For the show notes and more great adventure travel podcasts, visit thepursuitzone.com.